I'm Jessica Martinez, and at 29, I thought I'd finally escaped the nightmare that was my childhood home. After years of building my jewelry business from a tiny garage workshop into a company worth millions, I believed my family would finally see me as more than their personal ATM. But last Sunday, at our monthly family brunch, my mom and dad exchanged those familiar sneaky looks before dropping their bombshell. Pack light tomorrow, sweetie, because we're all moving into your beautiful mansion. No discussion needed. My twin brother Marcus just grinned like he'd won the lottery, already planning which room would be his gaming cave. They sat there so sure I'd just roll over and let them take everything I'd worked for. I simply smiled sweetly and said, "Absolutely. Just make sure you bring 860K cash tomorrow morning." You should have seen their faces turn white as ghosts. What they didn't know was that I'd already made moves they could never imagine. Stick around because this story gets wild. But first, drop a comment and tell me what state you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Growing up in our cramped apartment in Phoenix felt like living in two different worlds under one roof. I was the older twin by exactly 4 minutes, but somehow that made me responsible for everything while Marcus got treated like a precious prince. Every year, my parents spent thousands sending him to expensive basketball camps and buying him the latest gear, even though he spent most games sitting on the bench. Meanwhile, I walked to school in worn-out shoes I'd bought myself with money from babysitting neighborhood kids after school. His room was filled with gaming systems, designer clothes, and a brand new laptop for school projects that he mostly used to watch videos. My space was a corner of the living room with a folding table where I did homework and practiced making jewelry from cheap beads I found at garage sales. They called his expensive toys investments in his future, while telling me I should be grateful for what I had. But Marcus wasn't just spoiled. He was a thief who took directly from me. During high school, he'd steal money from my piggy bank where I saved every dollar from my part-time job at the local diner, promising to pay me back, but never following through. Once, he found my hidden stash of $300 that I'd saved for months to buy jewelry-making supplies and spent it all on a fancy watch he wore for maybe a week. When I confronted him, he just laughed and said, "Relax, Jess, you're being way too dramatic about money." My parents took his side, saying I needed to learn to share better as the big sister. It hurt so badly, but I learned early that fighting back was useless in our house. The worst betrayal happened when I won a scholarship to attend a summer art camp in California, something I'd dreamed about since I was 12 years old. That same month, Marcus crashed his car into a mailbox while texting and driving. Without even asking if I could help in some other way, my parents told me I had to give up my scholarship money to help pay for his car repairs. They said Marcus needed the car more than I needed some silly art classes, and that I was selfish for even thinking about going. I handed over every penny I'd earned, watching my dreams disappear while they praised him for being responsible enough to admit his mistake. After that crushing disappointment, I stopped hoping they'd ever treat me fairly. At school, I threw myself into art classes and started selling handmade bracelets to classmates during lunch breaks. I secretly opened my own bank account at a small credit union downtown, determined to save money they couldn't touch or take away from me. By senior year, I had enough saved to buy professional jewelry-making tools and even rented a tiny workspace in an old building near downtown Phoenix. Marcus, meanwhile, barely graduated after failing 3 classes, but still got a huge party with catered food and a cake that cost more than I made in 2 months of bracelet sales. I watched from the kitchen doorway as he danced and celebrated, while I quietly planned my escape route to freedom. It wasn't just about the money they spent on him versus me. It was about being invisible unless they needed something fixed, cleaned, or paid for. Like when I spent entire weekends repairing our broken washing machine from YouTube tutorials while they took Marcus to expensive basketball tournaments, or when I worked double shifts at the diner to help with rent while he got spending money for mall trips with friends. Every time I considered standing up to them, Marcus would flash that charming smile and say, "Why can't you just be happy that someone in this family is successful?" And my parents would nod along as if my constant sacrifices were just what good daughters naturally did. Those years of feeling forgotten built something unbreakable inside me. I wasn't going to spend my life being their backup plan. I studied harder, worked longer hours, and made myself a promise that I'd never let them use me again. That determination carried me far away from their expectations and into a world where my talents actually mattered. After high school ended, college became my launching pad to a completely different life, setting the stage for building something they could never take away from me. I enrolled at Arizona State University with a partial scholarship that covered about half my tuition costs. To pay for the rest, I worked 3 different jobs: cleaning office buildings at dawn, making custom jewelry for sorority girls on weekends, and serving coffee at a busy campus cafe between classes. Most nights, I survived on maybe 4 hours of sleep, chugging energy drinks to stay awake during lectures. My parents, of course, paid Marcus's full tuition at a private college in California, where he studied communications, but mostly partied with fraternity brothers who posted constant pictures of beach trips and expensive restaurants. I'd see his social media posts during my coffee breaks, showing off his carefree lifestyle, while I had sore hands from stringing beads and aching feet from standing behind coffee machines for hours. One busy afternoon at the campus library, I met Elena Rodriguez, a business major with dreams of opening her own marketing agency. We bonded over our packed schedules and shared stories about working multiple jobs while other students had everything handed to them. She understood the exhaustion that came with paying your own way through college. Elena became my closest friend and biggest supporter, always encouraging me when I wanted to quit during particularly rough weeks, when every muscle in my body hurt from working so hard. We'd grab cheap pizza after our shifts, dreaming about the businesses we'd build and the financial freedom we'd create for ourselves. Her belief in my jewelry-making skills kept me going when I doubted whether anyone would actually buy my creations. Between classes and work, I discovered an online course about e-commerce and social media marketing for small businesses. The content fascinated me, learning how to photograph products, write compelling descriptions, and reach customers through Instagram and Facebook. I started an Etsy shop called Desert Dreams Jewelry and invested my tip money from the coffee shop into better photography equipment and higher quality materials like sterling silver and genuine gemstones. Late nights became my creative time, designing unique pieces inspired by Arizona sunsets and desert landscapes. I wasn't just making jewelry anymore, I was building a brand that people connected with emotionally. By my senior year, I graduated with a 3.8 GPA and minimal student debt because I'd worked myself to exhaustion to avoid borrowing money. My Etsy shop had grown to over 5,000 sales, and I was making enough profit to rent a small studio apartment near campus. At 23, I signed a lease on my first real workspace, a 200-square-foot studio in an artist collective building where I could focus on jewelry making without distractions. The rent wasn't cheap, but it represented freedom from my family's constant demands and expectations. I thought maybe, just maybe, my success would finally earn their respect and admiration. So, at 24, I invited them to visit my studio during a local art fair where I was showcasing my best pieces. My parents walked through the space with wide eyes, taking pictures of my organized workspace and displays of sparkling necklaces and earrings. Marcus trailed behind them, asking how much everything cost and whether I could make him some cool guy jewelry for free. They said encouraging things like, "This is really impressive," and "You've built something special here." But then came the questions that made my stomach drop, detailed inquiries about my monthly income, how much jewelry I could produce, and whether I needed help managing all that money. My mother kept hinting that family members should support each other financially, while Marcus suggested I could easily afford to help them out with their bills since business was obviously going so well. Their words sounded supportive on the surface, but their eyes had a hungry look that made me uncomfortable. That evening, Elena and I sat in my studio talking about their visit over takeout containers. She pointed out how their questions focused entirely on money rather than my creative process or artistic growth. "They weren't here to celebrate your success," she said gently. "They were calculating how much they could get from you." My heart sank because I knew she was right. I'd spent years proving I didn't need their approval, but seeing their greedy interest made me realize they weren't proud of me. They were just figuring out how to benefit from my hard work. That realization hardened something inside me. Whatever happened next, I was going to protect what I'd built, no matter who stood in my way or how much they claimed to love me. A few weeks after their studio visit, my cousin Sophia called with information that confirmed my worst fears about my family's true intentions. Sophia had always been the family member who noticed everything and wasn't afraid to speak the truth. "Jess," she whispered into the phone late one night, "your parents are in serious financial trouble. They owe over $40,000 in credit card debt from paying for Marcus's college lifestyle and that expensive apartment he wanted." I gripped the phone tighter, feeling sick to my stomach. She continued, explaining how they'd been borrowing money to cover his spring break trips, his car payments, and even his gym membership, while their own savings account sat completely empty. The worst part was what Sophia overheard at a family barbecue, my parents discussing how they could convince Jessica to help out and maybe even move in with me to save on rent money. The next week, I accidentally heard a phone conversation that made my blood turn to ice. My father was talking in the kitchen of their apartment, assuming I was out running errands. "Jessica's got that big studio space now," he said in a cold, calculating voice. "We could easily move our stuff in there, save a ton of money, and she should be contributing more to family expenses anyway. She owes us after everything we've done for her." The words felt like a slap across my face. I stood frozen in the hallway, remembering all the times Marcus had taken my money as teenagers and how they'd always defended his actions. This wasn't about needing help. They saw my success as something they deserved to share without earning it. Betrayal burned in my chest hotter than a Phoenix summer day. I wasn't about to let them destroy what I'd worked so hard to build from nothing. That afternoon, I called Robert Kim, a lawyer who specialized in small business protection and had helped several artists in my building. In his downtown office, I explained everything: my jewelry business growth, my family's debt problems, and their obvious plans to take advantage of me. Robert, who was both professional and understanding, helped me calculate the total value of my business, including inventory, equipment, and my customer base. The number shocked me: nearly $1 million built from years of 18-hour workdays and creative passion. "You need to protect these assets immediately," he advised, adjusting his glasses seriously. We spent the next week structuring a deal where I would sell my entire business to an investment group for exactly $860,000 in cash, keeping my work protected from anyone who might try to claim they deserved a piece of what I'd earned. I signed all the legal papers in secret, making sure the sale would be finalized before my family could interfere with my decision. Every signature felt like building a wall around my future. At first, I didn't even tell Elena about the sale. But one evening over dinner at our favorite Mexican restaurant, the weight of keeping secrets became too much. "They don't love me," I confessed, my voice shaking with emotion. "They just see dollar signs when they look at my success." Elena listened carefully, her expression growing more serious as I shared details about their mounting debts and scheming conversations. She reminded me of all the times they dismissed my achievements, like when they missed my college graduation ceremony to attend one of Marcus's basketball games where he didn't even play. "You've got this," she said firmly. "You've always been stronger and smarter than they give you credit for." Her confidence in me felt like a lifeline when doubt started creeping into my thoughts. To prepare for the inevitable confrontation, I also confided in Maria Santos, my mentor from the artist collective who had become like an older sister to me. Over coffee, I shared my fears about my family's growing demands for money and support. Maria, who had dealt with her own family drama involving money and boundaries, didn't sugarcoat the truth. "They'll get more aggressive when they realize you're not going to be their personal bank," she warned me. We brainstormed strategies for staying focused on my next business venture, a line of luxury jewelry designed for professional women, even if my family tried to sabotage my efforts. Her wisdom about setting firm boundaries gave me the courage I needed to face whatever was coming. With Elena's emotional support and Maria's practical advice, I steeled myself for the confrontation I knew was inevitable. My family thought they could walk all over me like they always had, but I was ready to show them exactly how much I'd changed since leaving their toxic household behind. That Sunday morning at Rosita's family restaurant in downtown Phoenix, tension filled the air thicker than the Arizona heat outside. My parents sat across from me with smug expressions, looking like they'd already won some kind of game I didn't know we were playing. Marcus lounged next to them, scrolling through his phone with a bored smirk, occasionally looking up to flash that annoying grin he'd perfected in childhood. Elena had come with me for moral support, sitting quietly beside me while Sophia watched nervously from the end of our booth. The restaurant buzzed with Sunday brunch conversations, but our table felt isolated in its own bubble of unspoken conflict. My father leaned forward with confidence radiating from every pore, his voice low but commanding. "Jessica," he announced, "we've made a family decision. Tomorrow we're all moving into your studio space. There's plenty of room, and it's time you started helping us financially, like a good daughter should." My mother nodded enthusiastically, her smile sharp as a knife. "Family takes care of family," she added, as if the discussion was already over and decided. I let their words hang in the air, my heartbeat steady and calm. Thanks to Sophia's warnings and my father's overheard scheming, this moment held no surprises for me whatsoever. Smiling sweetly, I set down my orange juice glass and looked directly into their expectant eyes. "That sounds wonderful," I said in my most pleasant voice. "I'd be happy to accommodate everyone, but you'll need to bring $860,000 in cash tomorrow morning since that's what the space is worth." The entire table went completely silent. My father's jaw dropped open, his confident expression melting into pure shock. My mother blinked rapidly, her triumphant smile disappearing like a magic trick. Marcus actually dropped his phone, his face twisting with disbelief and confusion. They had expected me to roll over and submit like I had throughout our entire childhood, but instead I'd completely flipped the script on them. Marcus recovered first, his voice rising with indignation. "You're being ridiculous, Jessica. You've always been selfish and greedy, keeping everything for yourself instead of sharing with family," he snapped, his words dripping with the same entitlement he displayed since we were children. His girlfriend Ashley, who had stayed quiet until now, chimed in with a mocking tone. "What's wrong with you? You think you're so much better than everyone else just because you make jewelry? You've always been jealous that Marcus is the favorite." Their accusation stung, but I'd heard variations of these same attacks for years growing up in their shadow. My father leaned in closer, his voice turning cold and threatening. "You're making a huge mistake turning your back on family like this," he said menacingly. "I'll make sure everyone in Phoenix knows exactly what kind of selfish daughter you really are." His threat was designed to make me cave in through guilt and fear, just like when I was a teenager. My mother, always the master of emotional manipulation, let crocodile tears well up in her eyes. "After everything we've sacrificed for you over the years," she whispered in a trembling voice. "All those times we went without, so you could have what you needed growing up." Her words were completely backwards from reality, but she delivered them with perfect victim-like conviction. I didn't flinch or back down even slightly. "You mean the sacrifices I made?" I replied firmly, my voice growing stronger with each word. "Like giving up my art scholarship to pay for Marcus's car repairs? I'm done being your family, The truth felt like a dam bursting, releasing years of suppressed resentment and anger. Elena squeezed my hand under the table, her touch warm and encouraging, silently urging me to stand my ground no matter what they said. Sophia gave me a small but proud nod from across the table, her eyes filled with respect for my courage. Their support gave me strength as my family's faces cycled through anger, shock, and desperate calculation. Marcus muttered ungrateful under his breath while my mother continued her theatrical crying performance. My father's glare promised future retaliation, but I met his stare without wavering or showing any fear. They had assumed they could bully me into giving up my independence and financial security, but I'd already taken steps to protect everything I'd worked for. No amount of guilt trips, threats, or emotional manipulation would change my decision to finally put myself first for once in my life. The aftermath of that restaurant confrontation hit like a desert sandstorm, chaotic and all-consuming. By Monday evening, Marcus had launched a full social media campaign against me, posting on Facebook and Instagram about how I'd become a heartless monster who refused to help her struggling family. "My sister cares more about money than blood," he wrote alongside a carefully staged photo of himself looking sad and disappointed. The comment section filled up with responses from our extended family and old high school classmates, people who only knew his version of our story. "How could you be so cruel to your own parents?" one cousin wrote angrily. "Family should always come first," added a former classmate who had never worked a day to support herself. Each notification felt like a knife twist, and I watched childhood friends unfriend me, their loyalty easily swayed by his lies and manipulation. I wanted to defend myself, to tell them about all the years I'd carried my family's financial burdens while Marcus got everything handed to him, but engaging would only add fuel to his victim narrative. The situation escalated dramatically the following Thursday, when my parents showed up uninvited at my studio during a busy afternoon when I was meeting with potential wholesale buyers for my jewelry line. I was presenting my latest collection to Jennifer Walsh, a buyer from a major department store chain, when their angry voices cut through the peaceful atmosphere of my workspace. "Where's Jessica?" my father shouted, his face bright red with rage. "She owes us our fair share of this business after everything we've invested in her over the years." My mother followed behind him, waving her arms dramatically and yelling about how I'd stolen their chance at financial security and a comfortable retirement. Jennifer's eyes widened in shock, and my assistant Maria froze at her desk, unsure how to handle the disruption. I stepped forward quickly, my heart pounding but my voice staying calm and professional. "This isn't the appropriate place for family discussions," I said firmly, trying to de-escalate the situation. They ignored my request completely, continuing to make demands about getting their rightful share of my success and threatening to cause more scenes until I gave them what they wanted. I had no choice but to call building security, who arrived within minutes to escort my parents out while they shouted threats about ruining my reputation and business relationships. The humiliation burned like fire, but I stood tall and maintained my composure, refusing to let them sabotage my professional life the way they'd tried to control my personal finances. Back in my apartment that evening, I met with Robert Kim to review the legal protections we'd put in place around my business sale. He carefully went through every document, confirming that the $860,000 transaction was completely secure and legally bulletproof. "There's absolutely no way they can challenge this or make any claims on your assets," he assured me, organizing the papers in his briefcase. "You're fully protected from any lawsuits or legal harassment." Relief washed over me, mixed with the exhaustion that came from constantly defending myself against my own family's attacks. Later that week, Sophia called with updates about the financial chaos my parents were facing after their failed attempt to move in with me. She'd learned they had taken out a third mortgage on their small apartment to cover even more of Marcus's living expenses, including a new gaming setup and a weekend trip to Las Vegas with his girlfriend Ashley. "They're drowning in debt," she told me sadly, "and they're still blaming you instead of taking responsibility for their poor financial choices." I shook my head, finally understanding that their money problems were entirely self-created through years of spoiling Marcus, while expecting me to bail them out whenever things got difficult. That weekend, I made the difficult but necessary decision to block my parents' phone numbers and Marcus's social media accounts. No more angry calls, no more guilt-trip text messages, no more attempts to manipulate me through emotional blackmail. The decision felt like cutting heavy chains that had been dragging me down for most of my adult life. I turned my energy toward Elena, who was launching her own marketing consultancy, and Maria, my mentor, who was expanding the artist collective to include more creative entrepreneurs. We spent late evenings at my apartment planning new business ventures, their innovative ideas and unwavering support pushing me toward exciting possibilities I'd never considered before. "You're finally free to make decisions based on what you want, not what they demand," Elena said one night over takeout containers and business plans spread across my coffee table. Her words sank deep into my consciousness, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely excited about my future instead of constantly worried about defending my past decisions. The storm of family drama was still raging around me, but I was finding solid ground surrounded by people who valued my talents and respected my boundaries without trying to take advantage of my success. 8 months later, as Elena and I celebrated the grand opening of our new jewelry and marketing studio in Scottsdale, the weight of my family's toxic expectations had finally lifted completely. We'd gotten married in a simple but beautiful ceremony at the Desert Botanical Garden, surrounded by close friends, Maria, Sophia, and a few other family members who genuinely supported our relationship. No expensive reception, no family drama, just heartfelt vows to build a life based on mutual respect, shared dreams, and complete financial independence from anyone who might try to control us. Our combined workspace, a bright and airy studio with room for both jewelry making and client meetings, felt like the fresh start we'd both worked so hard to achieve. We spent our evenings arranging displays, laughing over dinner plans, and mapping out a future that belonged entirely to us. With Maria's guidance and Elena's marketing expertise, I invested most of the $860,000 from my business sale into a revolutionary new venture, a luxury jewelry subscription service that delivered custom pieces to professional women across the Southwest. Elena's talent for social media strategy combined perfectly with my design skills and knowledge of precious metals. Within 6 months, we had launched the subscription platform, gained over 2,000 subscribers, and secured partnerships with boutique stores in 5 major cities. We hired 4 talented artists from local art schools, their creativity and enthusiasm reminding me daily why I loved working with my hands to create beautiful things. Every late night spent perfecting new designs. Every breakthrough in customer satisfaction felt like validation that I'd made the right choice by protecting my assets and investing in my own vision rather than letting my family drain my resources. Meanwhile, my family continued to face the natural consequences of their financial mismanagement and refusal to take responsibility for their own choices. Sophia, still my only connection to family updates, shared what had happened to them after I cut off contact completely. Marcus and Ashley had broken up after a massive fight about money. She'd grown tired of dating someone who expected everyone else to pay for his lifestyle but contributed nothing himself. He moved back in with my parents, sleeping on their couch and working part-time at a pizza delivery job that barely covered his car insurance payments. His social media posts, once full of expensive restaurants and vacation photos, now showed a much quieter existence without the constant financial support he'd taken for granted his entire life. My parents weren't managing any better than Marcus was. To cover their mounting debts, including those multiple mortgages they'd taken out to fund his lifestyle, they were forced to sell their apartment and move into a tiny senior living community on the outskirts of Phoenix. The facility was clean and safe, but a far cry from the comfortable retirement they'd envisioned when they assumed they could live off my success indefinitely. Sophia mentioned they still complained about me to anyone who would listen, blaming me for their financial struggles instead of acknowledging that their decades of poor money management and favoritism had created their current situation. I felt no guilt about their downsizing. They created their own problems by choosing to prioritize Marcus's wants over building genuine financial security for their future. Looking back on everything that had happened, I could see the situation with crystal clarity. Setting firm boundaries with my family wasn't selfish or cruel. It was essential for my own survival and success. Their lifelong pattern of depending on me to solve problems they'd created, combined with their assumption that I would always sacrifice my own needs for theirs, had led them directly to their current financial crisis. I'd spent my teenage years and early 20s carrying their emotional and financial weight, from giving up scholarships to working multiple jobs to help pay their bills while Marcus got every advantage money could buy. But those days of being their personal safety net were permanently over, and the freedom that came with that realization was worth more than any amount of money. Cutting them off had freed me to build meaningful relationships with people who valued my hard work and creativity. Elena, with her fierce loyalty and business partnership. Maria, with her mentorship and wisdom about navigating family boundaries. Sophia, with her courage to tell the truth even when it was uncomfortable. As I sat in our beautiful new studio space, watching Elena arrange fresh flowers near the window display of my latest jewelry collection, I felt a deep sense of peace I'd never experienced while trying to manage my family's constant demands and expectations. The scars from their years of emotional manipulation and financial exploitation would always be part of my story, but they no longer controlled my decisions or limited my possibilities. I had chosen freedom over guilt, success over martyrdom, and authentic relationships over toxic family obligation. The business Elena and I built together became more successful than either of us had dared to imagine during those late nights planning our escape from family drama and financial insecurity. Our jewelry subscription service expanded to include corporate partnerships, celebrity endorsements, and even a feature in a major fashion magazine that called our designs the perfect blend of Southwestern elegance and modern sophistication. We opened a second location in Santa Fe, hired 12 employees, and developed a waiting list of customers who wanted access to our exclusive monthly collections. Every milestone felt like proof that I'd made the right decision to protect my assets and invest in my own vision rather than allowing my family to drain my resources for their short-sighted financial fixes. The success wasn't just measured in dollars or recognition, though both were gratifying after years of financial struggle and family dismissal. It was measured in the quiet satisfaction of creating something beautiful with my own hands, the joy of working alongside someone who respected my talents and shared my values, and the security that came from knowing I'd never again have to choose between my dreams and my family's demands. Elena and I talked often about how different our lives might have been if I'd given in to the pressure and allowed my parents and Marcus to move into my studio space, draining my resources and probably destroying the business opportunities that led to our current success. We also discussed the importance of teaching other young entrepreneurs about setting boundaries with family members who saw their success as something they deserved to share without earning or contributing to it. Through workshops at local colleges and mentorship programs at the Artist Collective, I began sharing my story with other creative professionals who struggled with similar family dynamics and financial manipulation. Many of them had grown up as the responsible one, in families that took advantage of their work ethic while spoiling siblings who contributed nothing but expected everything to be handed to them. Seeing the relief and determination in their eyes when they realized they didn't have to sacrifice their futures to enable their family's poor choices reminded me daily that I'd made the right decision, regardless of how much criticism and guilt-tripping I'd endured along the way. As I looked toward the future Elena and I were building together, I felt grateful for every difficult lesson my family had taught me about the difference between love and manipulation, between supporting someone and enabling their destructive behavior, and between being generous and being taken advantage of by people who claimed to care about me but only valued what I could provide for them. Their betrayal had been painful, but it had also forced me to develop the strength and wisdom I needed to create a life based on genuine mutual respect rather than one-sided obligation and guilt. The jewelry business was thriving. Our marriage was built on equal partnership and shared dreams, and I was surrounded by people who celebrated my successes rather than trying to profit from them. Most importantly, I had learned to trust my own judgment about what I deserved and what I was willing to tolerate from people who claimed to love me. The scared, overworked teenager who had given up her scholarship to pay for Marcus's car repairs was gone forever, replaced by a confident woman who knew her worth and refused to accept anything less than genuine respect and appreciation. My family's attempts to manipulate me through guilt and obligation had backfired spectacularly, teaching me exactly how strong I could be when I stopped prioritizing their comfort over my own well-being and financial security. Elena often reminded me that the $860,000 I'd protected from their grasping hands had been transformed into something worth far more than money, a business, a marriage, and a life built on authentic values rather than toxic family dynamics that demanded endless sacrifice from some members while spoiling others beyond recognition. The final lesson came during a chance encounter at a Phoenix coffee shop where I saw Marcus working behind a counter, looking older and more tired than his years should have allowed. He noticed me but didn't approach, probably unsure how I'd react after months of no contact between us. I felt no satisfaction in seeing him struggle, but I also felt no urge to rescue him from consequences he'd created through years of entitled behavior and financial irresponsibility. As I left with my coffee, I realized that the angry, resentful part of me that had carried childhood grievances for so long had finally healed. I didn't need him to apologize or acknowledge how unfairly I'd been treated growing up. I didn't need my parents to admit their mistakes or change their behavior. I had everything I needed: a partner who valued me, work that fulfilled me, financial security I'd earned through my own efforts, and the unshakable knowledge that I deserved all of it. Walking back to my car under the Arizona sunshine, I smiled thinking about Elena waiting at our studio, probably sketching new marketing ideas while surrounded by the jewelry designs that had carried us both toward the life we dreamed about during those late nights planning our future together.